Ramo, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Tirabha Mahotsava ki. Hare Krishna, dragi bhakte. Dobrodošli na tem posebnem dogodku o 45. obletnici odhoda Srila Prabhupade. Zdaj po teh bhajanih kratkih uvodnih bomo povabili posebne goste. Imamo z nami 3 Prabhupadove učence, ki bodo z nami delili svoje izkušnje realizacije za Srila Prabhupada, direktni učenci. Tako da we welcome our special guest, His Holiness Paladananda Swami, His Grace Partha Prabhu, and Her Grace Uttama Mataji, disciples of Srila Prabhupada. We now have Krishna Katha. We invite all 3 guests to sit in the front and share with us Prabhupada Katha on this very special occasion of 45th anniversary of the departure of Srila Prabhupada. So please kindly, if you can sit in the front. This will last till around 7 o'clock, and then we'll have Damodarashtaka, little bhajan, and then 7:45 we'll have Pushpanjali, the offering of flowers of gratitude and surrender to Srila Prabhupada, and 8 o'clock is Prasadam, Srila Prabhupada, Mahaprasadam. Hare Krishna.
Sunshine. Enjoying sunshine.
Good question. George, those are up there. I think he has more books.
So, I learned a long time ago that I have this kind of hobby, that when I feel gratitude, I cry. So just see past the tears, and as I keep talking, the tears will go away in a few minutes. You just gotta bear with me. Just the way the body works, I can't do too much about it. So, this is a very
happy.
It's true. It is a very happy day. It's a very happy day because on the disappearance of the spiritual master, you simultaneously feel their absence, but when you feel their absence, you feel their presence, and then you feel happy. So we were with Srila Prabhupada in 1977 when he passed. And it was a very, momentous occasion because it was very evident that Srila Prabhupada taught us till the very last second. And so even how to leave the body and go back home, back to Godhead, he taught us in the presence of everyone. Like Srila Prabhupada, he wanted as many of his disciples as possible to go and be with him on that day. And, out of gratitude for the service that we had rendered to him. And I suspect also so that we can understand, how to the situation in which one should put himself at the time of death, surrounded by chanting of the Hare Krishna and people that wish you well. And it was really a very moving occasion. And it's not mostly how I remember Srila Prabhupada. I more think of him in all the ways in which he interacted over the years. And it was just a very heartfelt conclusion to his wonderful sharing of Krishna consciousness with us. So Srila Prabhupada would often quote that books are the basis, purity is the force, that preaching is the essence, and utility is the principle. So we can see that for Srila Prabhupada, he put great emphasis on completing as much as he could of his Bhaktivedanta purports and being able to share his heart with us in those books, and to instill the importance of sharing this knowledge with other people because it has such benefit for the world. And Prabhupada exemplified such a purity of purpose that it was contagious. You naturally, in Prabhupada's presence, would feel an unmotivated attraction to doing service for him and for Krishna. He didn't have this, well, what about me? It was just that purity was so present. And you could see that for Prabhupada, preaching was the essence. It didn't matter if he was sick, if he was well, even lying on his bed, he's preaching, because he could understand that that's the essence of Lord Chaitanya's movement, to share what he taught with as many people as possible, simply for their benefit. And so we can see that this utility was the principle. Prabhupada was the acharya for utility is the principle. Some people have commented that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the acharya for books are the basis, and that Gorkishore Das Babaji was the acharya for purity is the force. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta for preaching is the essence. He opened so many temples and preached like a lion. And Srila Prabhupada was expert at utilizing everything and everyone in Krishna's service. And that quality was noted several times by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Prabhupada said. Srila Prabhupada said he noted that quality in me. I think my husband was explaining yesterday in class how there was a time when the spiritual sky incense business was happening, and some devotees were criticizing this as a material endeavor. And Prabhupada wrote back, he says, how you big leaders cannot understand that they are giving $1 million a year for the service of the deity in this temple, and you are calling it material. You do not understand how to utilize everything in Krishna's service. And Srila Prabhupada said, my spiritual master appreciated that in me. And we can see that because Srila Prabhupada had a business for a while in, I think, Mumbai. And
he was very expert in his preaching, and so some of the leaders of the temple there, they said, oh, this Abhay Babu, he should be the president. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, oh, just leave him, he will do in his time. Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta could see that in Srila Prabhupada, that he would know how to utilize everything to spread Krishna consciousness. And so it's really very incredible how Srila Prabhupada was able to engage so many people in the process of Krishna consciousness. And that, whatever small talent we had, Srila Prabhupada would engage us in that service for the purpose of spreading Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. So even if you had a little talent to draw, you would do these paintings, and you see many of these artists, they were just beginning artists, but because they're doing it for Krishna and Prabhupada's service, what beautiful art they ended up producing. And if you were good at drama, he would have you do dramas for Krishna's service, or whatever your particular expertise was, management or cooking or carpentry. Just somehow or other, Prabhupada would engage us to use it in spreading Krishna conscious movement. And that purified our material desires, so that we could gradually be able to do whatever we do in a pure way for Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, he repeatedly helped us to understand this goal of unmotivated devotional service. And that seems like such a high bar, but when you're in Srila Prabhupada's presence, or even in his Krishna conscious movement, you didn't think about yourself. You just thought about, how could I possibly please Srila Prabhupada? And so that sets us on that path of unmotivated devotional service, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu somehow or other wanted everybody to experience. So sometimes it's said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most magnanimous avatar. And because he has come and he has given us the highest thing, sharing Srimati Radharani's love and her devotion. And his munificence was shown, specifically showcased by Nityananda Prabhu when he went to preach to Jagai and Madai. These were the most fallen people. And he thought, if Lord Chaitanya can give this highest thing that there is to the lowest person, then how could you be more magnanimous? And so sometimes also Srila Prabhupada was criticized for just preaching to people like us. But you can see that it's just to show the potency of Lord Chaitanya's blessings, that Srila Prabhupada can give that knowledge of the highest love to the most fallen people and be successful and spread it so far around the world. So one time someone asked Srila Prabhupada, if Lord Chaitanya wanted it spread everywhere, why didn't he do it? And Srila Prabhupada, he just humbly said, well, he left that for us to do. And Prabhupada didn't even say himself, he meant himself and, anybody who wanted to help him. So we can just see from this how magnanimous Srila Prabhupada was, and how absolutely expert he was in being able to share that highest philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with so many people in such a way that you can have contact with this Krishna conscious movement for 5-6 months And you can understand more the essence of the Vedas than some scholarly person, in India for generations, by that potency of Srila Prabhupada. So we have so much to be grateful for, that he, shared that with us, and that he somehow or other was able to engage all of us in some little bit of service for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we see that if somehow or other we can do it with the mood of helping Srila Prabhupada, then whatever lackings we have, Srila Prabhupada kind of fills in the gap, and he helps us in that way. So Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to purify our consciousness. One time some group of very enthusiastic book distributors went to Srila Prabhupada and they asked him, what service pleases you the most, Srila Prabhupada? And they were book distributors, so they wanted to feel that they'd please Prabhupada the most. Prabhupada was very expert, though. He, made sure we didn't get any, false pride. So he said, what pleases me the most is when you develop love of God. So that's what Srila Prabhupada came to help us develop this love of God. And it was so imperative to him that as many people as possible could experience this mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And so we see that, prasadam distribution, harinam, book distribution, they were all very, very dear to Srila Prabhupada. Just so as many people as possible can get that mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Once Srila Prabhupada described that if someone even once tastes a sweet ball, that at the time of death they will remember that taking prasadam. So we can't underestimate the things that Srila Prabhupada has shared with us. How to cook something with devotion, so that when we share that prasad, it has great impact on a person. We met a devotee in Italy recently, and he described how he met a devotee at his work or something, and he just seemed like a very effulgent person. And then, I don't know if it was shortly after, he got a sweet prasadam, somehow or other. And he said his whole life changed after that point. He said the very next day he could feel his life changing and his, material impediments just falling away. And very soon he found himself in the association of devotees, just by this potency of, Mahaprasad. So Srila Prabhupada was just so magnanimous that he, wants us all to taste that mercy from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so just to really appreciate, how magnanimous Srila Prabhupada was, can enable us to also take up the process which he has imparted to us with more conviction. Because we see that Srila Prabhupada is very, very present in his books. And so many people say they have some dilemma, and you open the book and there's the answer. Practically every devotee has a story about that. So we understand that Srila Prabhupada, is here with us, and that if we can somehow or other, with sincerity, read his books and try to imbibe it and give back to him by sharing Krishna consciousness with others. One time, Srila Prabhupada asked a devotee to please go and preach in Japan. And he said, if you preach in Japan, I guarantee you, you will go back home, back to Godhead. So this devotee went and he did quite a bit of preaching in Japan. And then after that, somehow or other, he kind of succumbed to his, past anartas. And he fell into a little bit of a degraded state of life. But somehow or other, near the time of his death, he came back to Krishna. And he had a most glorious passing that just by Prabhupada's mercy, if we could do a little something to help him. Prabhupada is not ungracious. Just like we were describing about the Govardhan Hill, he says, I'm not an ungracious Lord, I will reciprocate with you. So it's the same with Prabhupada. If we can just somehow or other do a little something for Srila Prabhupada, then that's our path back to Godhead. There's no other way to get there. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you for sticking up with my tears. Just leave it here and point it this way. Okay.
I would like to attempt to say something about our different experiences with Srila Prabhupada in different ways. And
sorry, he's sitting beside me. It rubs off a little bit. Hopefully it won't get to you, Maharaj.
Probably not.
And maybe I'll explain how we were kind of directed towards Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. In 1971, we embarked on a spiritual quest. And it started actually with Uttama's mother sending us a Bhagavad Gita.
My dad.
Oh, your dad, okay. And however, due to our innumerable lives of sinful karma that was accumulated, it was impersonalist Bhagavad Gita. And this yogi he talked about the God consciousness, but he was saying it's something so far off, don't even bother thinking about it. And then we were reading all other kinds of impersonalist books and philosophies. And over a period, 1971 and 72, and reading all those different philosophies that, God is one, you can worship Shiva, Durga, the impersonal, the personal, it's all one. And it left me feeling, to be perfectly honest, there was a point where I actually felt if I couldn't come to a conclusive understanding of whether God was personal or impersonal, I thought I would just commit suicide. It was that painful. It was that painful. It was literally, it was an impersonal calamity. And one day in 1973, I went to our local library in Victoria, Canada, and there was a metaphysical section, and I went to the end of the aisle, bottom shelf. I picked up 2 books randomly, took them to the checkout, and it was Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Volume 2, and Bhagavad Gita as it is. And first I tried to read Krishna book, and it was a pastime about the Shamataka jewel. And I thought, well, this is like a soap opera. So I gave it to Uttama, and she loved that. Then I started reading Bhagavad Gita, and right away, Prabhupada answered my question. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It was such a powerful thing. Krishna, he just directly presented the personality of Godhead. It was such a powerful thing. It was like I opened Srila Prabhupada books and started reading, and they have an expression. Do you see what I mean? When I read Prabhupada's books, that's the first time I realized what that expression meant. Everything else I'd read previously in metaphysical philosophy, it was just a bunch of word jugglery. It didn't really, it was interesting, but it didn't really have any tangible meaning or application to life. I started reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, and it was just such a powerful thing. Literally, a light went on. It was like on a cold night, sitting by a fire with warm, burning, glowing embers. And that's what the words on the pages were, just like these glowing embers that were just warming your soul. And I was so attracted to reading Bhagavad Gita. But because of that impersonal contamination, and literally Prabhupada said if you're exposed to impersonal philosophy, Prabhupada said it can ruin your intelligence, it can ruin you. And it ruined my intelligence because I was trying to understand Bhagavad Gita as it is. I was appreciating Prabhupada's conception of bhakti, and I'd come to a point where he would be just completely defeating a personalist ideas, and I would think, I can't read this anymore. And I remember putting it in a closet and think, that's it, I'm just not going to touch it again. And just I would be drawn to pull it out again and start reading it. But it just kept happening. I just kept feeling, I just can't continue. And so that went on. But I realized somehow I needed to meet a devotee. So I had these questions. And so I was in downtown Victoria one day, and I was crossing the intersection, a busy intersection, and all of a sudden I found myself, there was a stick of incense in my hand, and these two guys in orange robes walking the other direction. And I ended up on the other side of the crossing. They were on the other side walking the opposite direction. So I had to wait for the light to change, and I just ran after them like my life depended on it. And it did. So I finally caught up to them, and I tried to ask them some questions. And they replied to me, we're sorry we can't talk to you. We're going to the park to have our lunch, to have prasad. And they wouldn't talk to me. And I just felt devastated. I just was searching for these people. Here they are, and they're saying, I can't talk to you. And they said, just go down the street. There's some more devotees there. And so I just searched down the street, and finally I came to one corner, and there was a brahmachari there standing on the street, orange, it was just glowing robes. And I went up to him and I tried to ask him some questions. And he gave me a book. It was Elevation to Krishna. And I literally emptied my wallet. I gave him everything that was in my wallet. And then I tried to ask him some questions. And I remember he said to me, he was like a brand new devotee, like just shaved up, probably been in the temple like 2 or 3 days, didn't know anything. He said to me, my Sankirtan leader, my Brahmin, said I shouldn't talk to anyone for more than 2 minutes.
Well, that's a long time.
And then he started to walk away. I actually felt devastated. And I don't know if you've ever been very, very close to a thunderbolt. If you're really close to a thunderbolt, immediately after, it's like everything seems dead silent. It's like the whole world stopped. That's what that moment was like. He was walking away. I could just see his orange sika was kind of blowing in the wind, and his robes were just kind of ruffling in the wind. And he's walking away from me. It seemed like the traffic just disappeared. It was just me and him in that state of consciousness. And I had it was like a voice that I've never heard before saying, this man is the representative of a very great personality. I was thunderstruck. I was actually thunderstruck. And then I went back to where we lived, this little cabin on Vancouver Island, and I started reading Bhagavad Gita again, and I immediately came to this one verse, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Manmaya Malvam Pashrita, where Krishna describes how you have to become free from attachment, fear, and anger. And by doing that, you can develop love for Krishna. And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada describes how because of association in the material world and association with this impersonal philosophy since time immemorial, when one hears about the concept of the personality of Godhead, one will feel frightened because everything you have experienced in terms of an existence has been filled with suffering, pain, misery, and it's temporary. So we have that conditioning. So when you hear about an eternal spiritual existence, an eternal spiritual personality of God, it's not within your frame of reference. So you become fearful. And I realized that's what was holding me back. That's why I was running into this block reading Prabhupada's books. And that was just like the door opened for me totally. I knew that Prabhupada was my spiritual master. And I think within a matter of weeks, we moved into a temple in Vancouver, Canada, a small house, 3 floors, about 45 devotees living in a small house. And it was one of the most amazing experiences in our life that I wouldn't change for anything. And we were fortunate in 1973, we took first initiation from Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles. I thought Uttama would describe this, but she didn't. It was very interesting. The morning of our initiation, Srila Prabhupada was lecturing on the pastimes of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, and he was describing how the whole dynasty, all the men went to this Prabhashetra, and they became intoxicated. Prabhupada described they were drinking some kind of a wine, and in the class Prabhupada described how you can ferment rice, and Prabhupada said
Make a nice wine.
it makes a very nice wine. So we're thinking, okay, we're going to take this vow not to take intoxication, and Prabhupada's talking about taking a nice wine. So we took initiation from Srila Prabhupada, and then we actually didn't see Srila Prabhupada again until 1977. There's a really famous picture of Srila Prabhupada dancing on the Rath Yatra cart, and if any of you know Bahadak, he's there playing with Dranga, and there's a whole bunch of Vancouver devotees there. And every year the Vancouver devotees would go to San Francisco Rath Yatra to see Srila Prabhupada, 73, 74, 75, 76. Everyone would go except for me and Uttama and this one women's traveling party and a few brahmacharis. We were surrendered, and we would go to some super big Sankirtan spot that was the prime time for it. So we never got to see Prabhupada there. Finally, the last year, I think it was 76 or 77, they said, okay, you can go this year. We went. Prabhupada didn't go that year. But somehow, by Krishna's mercy, we were able to go in 1977. And I may describe part of that because it's a little hard to remember some of those things. But one very vivid memory I have of that was traveling on the plane, and I was reading the first canto, and I was reading the verse, Nasta Praeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Yatam Ashloki Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki, how by rendering service unto the pure devotee and hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, everything inauspicious within the heart becomes practically destroyed to nil. And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada says there are 3 things. There's Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. There's the book Bhagavat, which is the book about Bhagavan. And there is the person Bhagavat, who leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavat. And Prabhupada said any one of those can award one perfection in life. So I was meditating on that as we were going to India. And then when we arrived in Vrindavan, when I first went into Srila Prabhupada's room, I offered my obeisances, and I remember looking up at Srila Prabhupada, and somehow I can't explain the experience in words, but Krishna allowed me to see that Srila Prabhupada was the embodiment of his books, and he was embodied within his books. That literally Srila Prabhupada is within his books. And that was like a very profound experience for me. And during that time, just like it's described in the Govardhan Leela, that the residents of Vrindavan, like the cowherd men and the cowherd women, they would see Krishna in the morning when he went to the pasture, and then when he came back from the pasture, the gopis would see him, in the night, and the cowherd boys would see him in the day. But when he lifted Govardhan Hill, everyone they got to focus on Krishna just for like 7 days and 7 nights. And it was almost like that in 1977 when Srila Prabhupada was in that final condition, that the devotees were there, had unlimited access to be in Srila Prabhupada's room. And I was in Srila Prabhupada's room sometimes anywhere from 4 to 14 hours a day, just doing kirtan and chanting japa. And it was a very powerful experience. And one thing that happened that was very vivid in my mind when Srila Prabhupada was being treated by Ramanuja Kaviraj. And he would come in several times a day. He would feel Prabhupada's pulse and put a stethoscope on Prabhupada's heart. And one afternoon he came in, knelt on Prabhupada's bed, put on his stethoscope. He placed it over Prabhupada's heart, and he actually jumped back. Like he looked like he was in complete shock. And he said later, we found out that he said to the devotees that at that point he realized that Prabhupada was an unalloyed pure devotee with all mystic powers. And he was exhibiting the heartbeat of an absolutely healthy person, which was impossible for someone in Prabhupada's condition. And he said he realized that whether Prabhupada stayed or he left, it was just his pastime. It was just his pastime. One other experience I had in that time, sometimes there'd be very few devotees in Prabhupada's room. I was actually quite surprised, like how few devotees were actually there in Prabhupada's room at that time. And I was in Prabhupada's room one day, and 2 devotees came in with a harmonium, and the devotee with the harmonium began singing Brahma Samhita, and I thought, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've heard, to be in Prabhupada's room and hear someone singing Brahma Samhita in this super melodious tune. And actually, personally, when I was in Prabhupada's room, I was always afraid I'd have to lead kirtan because I am extremely musically challenged. So there's always managed to be someone there that would lead the kirtan. Even sometimes it was just me and one other devotee. So this devotee was leading the kirtan. It was so beautiful. And then Prabhupada said, I just want japa. And I was surprised the devotee on the harmonium and the other devotee, they walked out of the room. I just thought, if Prabhupada wants japa, I will chant japa for Prabhupada. So for several days, I was bathing the Lita and Vishaka on the altar in Vrindavan. I would finish that and I would immediately go to Prabhupada's room. I would stay there chanting japa until I was falling asleep, standing up in the evening. So sometimes I'd be there like 14 hours just chanting japa for Prabhupada. And I think for me, that gave me the strength and determination to chant my rounds all these years. I have a very active mind. Some palmist read my hand once and said, oh, you have a very active mind. True. The only thing that helps me control my mind when I chant japa is just to remember that Srila Prabhupada personally asked me to chant the holy names. And that's my meditation when I chant, to chant for Srila Prabhupada. And I won't go further there. One thing I will say is that having witnessed Srila Prabhupada, his presence, his personal presence, and his transference from his manifest pastimes to his unmanifest pastimes, seeing him interned in the Samadhi in Vrindavan and the Pushpa Samadhi in Mayapur, my conviction, you could rip my soul from my body, but you could not separate me from the conviction that Srila Prabhupada is fully present in his books. He's fully present in the samadhis in Vrindavan and Mayapur, and he's fully present where devotees are sincerely trying to carry on his mission. And I can feel that here in Ljubljana with the devotees, just by your sincere endeavor to serve Srila Prabhupada. I can very much feel Srila Prabhupada's presence. And I would just like to jump to something that happened after Prabhupada's departure. We stayed in India probably for almost a month after Prabhupada left the planet. Every single class was just Prabhupada Gita. Pastimes we never heard before about Prabhupada. And so we were just hearing all this nectar of Prabhupada for a whole month. Then we went back to Canada. Got up late the next morning because we got back on a late flight. So I got up late the next morning. I went into the Vancouver Temple. I walked past the prasadam, and there's a man, a Jewish gentleman, sitting alone in the prasadam room. He was sitting on a little Jewish prayer mat and had one of these little hats. I forget what they're called. Yarmulke. And so I thought, after the whole experience hearing about Prabhupada's disappearance, I thought, I'm going to tell this man about Prabhupada. So I sat down beside him and started to just say something about Srila Prabhupada. And he said, oh, I met Srila Prabhupada. I said, really? Tell me about that. And so he told me that he used to work on the subway in New York City, and he would frequently, on his lunch break, go to this park, Tompkins Square Park, and sit there and take his lunch. And he said many times he saw Srila Prabhupada and a few devotees chanting in the park, and he saw sometimes Prabhupada chanting, sometimes speaking. And he told me when he would see Srila Prabhupada chanting, he said that park, normally it was very windy, and there would be like leaves blowing around and pieces of paper and garbage blowing around. He said when Prabhupada sang and chanted, he said everything would become completely still. He said it would just become completely still. And he told me, I swear, he said, I swear that the birds were landing in the trees to listen to Srila Prabhupada. Mm-hmm. And he also told me that he would actually sit with Srila Prabhupada on this park bench. And Prabhupada would say many things to him. And he said one day, this man Ruben, he's described in the Prabhupada Lilamrita. We later had him interviewed to have a story told in the Prabhupada Lilamrita. So he told me that he knew Prabhupada only had a few followers, this little tiny temple. He's sitting with Prabhupada. He had great respect. He actually thought at one point to becoming a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And so he's sitting with Srila Prabhupada, and he said, Srila Prabhupada just pointed out into the park and said, I have temples and printing presses and disciples and farms all over the world. And this man said, well, he didn't know what to think, because Prabhupada had practically nothing, but Prabhupada's making these statements. And then he said, Prabhupada said, we simply have to move through time and have faith in Krishna. And so this man Reuben, another occasion, he told Srila Prabhupada he was going to go on a world tour. And he said, Prabhupada told him, one day you will come back to Krishna. So this gentleman Reuben, he went on a world tour. He never heard anything about Prabhupada, never heard anything about ISKCON, never saw a devotee, never saw a book. From 67 to 77, and he shows up in Vancouver, and somehow he stumbled on this little Hare Krišna temple and came into the prasadam room. And he was amazed what Srila Prabhupada had said had manifest. And at that time, there was a film called, I think it was called The World of Hare Krišna. The Hare Krišna World, some Yadabar produced it, and we showed him that he was just completely awestruck. So Srila Prabhupada, he was, there are visionaries in this world who have visions, but Prabhupada was not just a visionary. We are literally living in Srila Prabhupada's vision. We are living in Srila Prabhupada's vision. And the more we can realize our connection with Prabhupada, and we all have that connection with Prabhupada. We as disciples have a connection with Prabhupada. You as grand disciples or aspiring grand disciples, you also have a very intimate connection with Srila Prabhupada. And if we can embrace that connection, the more we can embrace it, the more we can literally become a part of that vision which is unfolding before us. And especially those of you who are grand disciples of Srila Prabhupada, there's a very special mercy available, because the grandfather is actually more merciful with the grandchildren.
We can attest to that.
Yes,
we got 8 grandkids.
And when you, especially on the appearance day or disappearance day of the acharyas, if you pray to them, there's a special avenue for getting mercy. And literally, as Uttama was saying, we kind of testify to that. We had 3 children, and we didn't like dogs, so we would never let our... Anyway, take it from me. Grandparents are very merciful.
You gave your grandchildren a dog.
No, we didn't give them a dog, but the grandchildren got a dog, and they just came walking in the house one day with this puppy, and we just thought... Whatever.
It's connected with your grandchildren. So
Yeah.
Yes. So I very much encourage you all to just really deeply try to understand and apply Srila Prabhupada's books and serve his mission to whatever capacity you can. And all I can say is thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharane Oma Gyana Timanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I'd like to thank Partha Prabhu and Uttama Devidasi for their talks. I'll try and say something, hopefully it has some meaning. I'll start with one thing that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said. He reasons ill who thinks that Vaishnavas die, for thou art living still and sound, that Vaishnavas die to live, and living spread the holy name around. So I found out about Krishna consciousness in 1966 by reading one magazine called the East Village Other, where they had a picture of Srila Prabhupada. And then my friends had joined the movement in 26 Second Avenue, so they told me about it in beginning of 1968. And they told me they were living at, they get up early in the morning and they chant Hare Krishna and they dance at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I thought my friends had become moon worshippers. Then one of my other friends taught me the Hare Krishna mantra, but I didn't really know what it meant. In any case, when I actually joined the movement, when I found out and started to participate, then the only personality that everyone talked about was Srila Prabhupada, because we didn't have any books to talk about. We only had Prabhupada's originally 3 Srimad Bhagavatams, which were extremely difficult at that time for me to understand. And there was no other books. All we had was one verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and it wasn't even in Sanskrit. It was only the English with no purport. And my friend, whose name is Burjan Brew, would lecture 3 times a week on that verse without a purport. They knows it was the embodied soul is continually passing in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. So similarly, the soul will pass into another body at the time of death. In any case, I still remember the verse. After 6 months of hearing it 3 times a week. I had relatively, I guess, a good amount of association with Srila Prabhupada. And at that time, at least at one time, I remember when I spent a week with Srila Prabhupada in Buffalo. He was there, and we could go up and see him anytime, and sometimes I'd be there with Srila Prabhupada, and he'd just talk to me for a few hours, telling me different things. But I don't think I have to go into all the details, although for me it was being with Srila Prabhupada often was quite a mystic experience. But the real thing is that at one point I realized that whether I tried to get Srila Prabhupada's association, personal association, or I was just trying to serve him, then there wouldn't be any real difference between the two. And Prabhupada gave me a number of instructions by letter, besides personal instructions, I've had to correct my consciousness when I was with him. Like one time I was with Srila Prabhupada, and he was talking to me for a few hours, telling me different things, and then I was a mystic yogi. I was trying to become a mystic yogi before I joined the movement. So I was trying to read Prabhupada's aura. And Prabhupada stopped and looked at me and said, "Our process is not mystic yoga, it's bhakti." That was the last time I tried to read anyone's aura. In any case, whether I had Srila Prabhupada's personal association or not, then I realized the actual thing was to serve Srila Prabhupada. Especially Prabhupada gave me the instruction that you should, when the last letter he wrote to me, he said, you should go around the world and spread Krishna consciousness. This is in 1974 or 75 or something. And he said, you should make your goal in life to go back to the spiritual world without any further delay. So, after Srila Prabhupada left, supposedly departed, and then I felt my relation with Prabhupada had actually grown. Not so much due to my sincerity, but due to all the problems that came up in ISKCON. I mean, I never experienced, it was like, the first thing that came up were all my former associates, or devotees, godbrothers I knew as friends. Some of them became the acharyas of our society. And even I wasn't exactly, I read Prabhupada's books. As a matter of fact, that's what as soon as they came out, even when I was a Sankirtan leader, I'd drop off the devotees at my Sankirtan party, and then I'd go and read Prabhupada's books. And I had the ability to collect money in a very short period of time. So I'd go out and collect a whole lot of money in an hour or two, and then pick up everyone else. And that was my routine. In any case, I was amazed how all my friends had suddenly become acharyas. And I thought maybe it was something wasn't exactly right. And this went on for some time. It was more or less, as Rabindra Swarup called it at that time, it was the ending the fratricidal war. Because there was one side, there was devotees, as I said this morning, I think, I forget when I said it, that one of my friends, who I knew quite well, he was actually in 77, he had recommended me for sannyas. And he told me one day after he became an initiating guru, he said, isn't it wonderful that now I become an initiating guru and now I have all mystic power? He said, now I become a pure devotee. And I said, really? In any case, the actual point is that, or I was talking to one of the acharyas one time. I was sitting there, who's sitting on a throne, and he was telling me how Krishna is in his heart, and I told him, well, Krishna is also in everyone else's heart too. So the real point is that Srila Prabhupada, he is a manifestation of Krishna's energy, Srimati Radharani, as it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, acharyamam vijaniyam navamartir karhichet. Navamanyate karhichet. Nisara deva buddhyeta sarva deva mayo guru. That one should never disrespect the acharya because he's the manifestation of all the demigods. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives two definitions of acharya. One is the ordinary acharya who trains his students, just like a gurukul student, teacher. He trains his students to come to a higher level of consciousness. He's like a father whose purpose is to train up his children. But on the higher level, as Prabhupada said, our acharyas, they declare that the acharya, the actual acharya, is either a direct manifestation, a personal associate of Srimati Radharani, or a direct manifestation of Lord Nityananda. Now, Srila Prabhupada, after he left, well, even when he was here, there is so many conceptions of who Srila Prabhupada is. And I'm afraid that due to the fact that we ourselves are conditioned souls, and we think sometimes that our vision of something is absolute, is actually true, and to a certain extent it may be true, but it's probably more likely to be partial, being covered by the illusory energy. And therefore there is a tendency to, especially even when I was a devotee, and Prabhupada wrote me, my temple president, a letter at one time. Actually, I was married in the movement for 7 days. I never found out my wife's name. I knew her initiated name, but I never found out her legal name, because we never got legally married. In any case, Prabhupada wrote my temple president a letter. Yes, he should get married, and he should open a temple, because Prabhupada was opening temples everywhere. So Prabhupada, my temple president, told me I should go and open a temple. But at that time we went to New Vrindavan. New Vrindavan was in West Virginia, and it was the main center for our movement at that time. I mean, our movement had like 50 devotees in it. Anyhow, we went there, and the prominent leaders in our society at that time, because Prabhupada had given some devotees sannyas, as I mentioned before, we had a telephone in Buffalo where I was living, and we never used a telephone because it's too expensive. Prabhupada, one time he had a telephone put in his room in 26 Second Avenue, and Prabhupada was amazed because it only took a few days to actually have the telephone installed. And then 2 days after it was installed, Prabhupada said, "Take it out." And the devotees asked, "Why should we take it out, Prabhupada?" He said, "Because in India it takes around 3 or 4 months before you can get a telephone installed. But this was installed in a couple of days." I was amazed. He said, "But as soon as it's installed, 12 o'clock at night, someone calls me up and says, 'Swamiji, how are you?'" So Prabhupada said, "You're calling me up 12 o'clock at night to ask me how I am?" He said, "I'm so sorry." Click. Take it out. So we never used a telephone. What to speak of Prabhupada calling? So someone called up, and I answered the phone. It was Devananda, Prabhupada's secretary at that time. And he told me, Prabhupada wants to talk to Rupanuga, who was our temple president. So I got Rupanuga. I was amazed. So I stayed in the room, because I never heard Prabhupada talking on the telephone. And then Rupanuga got off the phone. I said, "What did Prabhupada say?" He said, "Prabhupada was crying." And I said, "Really? Why was he crying?" He said, "He told me they're trying to take the movement over, that you should come to LA immediately." So Rupanuga left, and he went to LA. That was the first time I became a temple president. much to the chagrin of everyone else in the temple. In any case, he was actually gone for a long time because he got into an accident coming back from LA. But what happened is that Prabhupada's godbrothers, there were a couple of few devotees who had left America to go to India to avoid the draft. And while they were in India, they took shelter of some of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers. Because, I don't know if anyone has been to India lately, but the first time I went to India around 74, then India was quite a bit different than it is now. It was, to just give you an example, if you wanted to make a long distance telephone call, and it would usually take a week to make one telephone call. And if you paid a huge amount of money, Lakshmi at that time, then you could do it the rapid rate, which would only take a day to make the phone call, a long distance phone call. So in any case, they went there and they had no alternative but to stay with some of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers. And when they were there, Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers had heard that Srila Prabhupada was named Srila Prabhupada, and they objected to it. And they started to send letters. They started to preach to Prabhupada's disciples who were there that Prabhupada wasn't bona fide, that actually he had unjustly taken the title of Prabhupada. So, mostly it was to LA, they were writing that, and then the godbrothers got this idea that Prabhupada, actually there was something wrong with Prabhupada and that they should take the movement over. And so Prabhupada had realized that because different things had happened. Like one day he was taking Charanamrita and there was salt in the Charanamrita instead of sugar. And he became very disturbed and he said, "Who did this?" And when Mataji was giggling, and Prabhupada was very upset. Then he asked Prabhupada one day, he said, "Is everyone chanting their rounds?" And then one devotee said, "No, Prabhupada, they told us not to chant our rounds." He said, "We don't have time to chant our rounds." So Prabhupada realized something was wrong. He called leading devotees from around the world, there weren't so many leading devotees, but anyhow, to come to LA to form the GBC. And then he gave some of the leaders sannyas there and sent them out to preach. So they wound up, those devotees, some of them who were my heroes, one of them was Vishnu Jan Maharaj, where I got to live with for 4 or 5 months, just him, his servant, and myself were opened a preaching center in Texas. And they were quite bewildered. I met Vishnu Jan Maharaj for the first time. This is 71, the end of 70. And he was not very coherent at that time. In any case, we were in New Vrindavan, and they gave a class. And all the devotees were in the class. It was Janmashtami. And one of them stood up and said, the reason why Prabhupada at that time had left and gone to Japan, to go back to India to preach in India. And he said the reason why Prabhupada left is because we didn't recognize that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one devotee stood up and said, "But Prabhupada didn't say that he was God." And he said, "Sit down!" And I was thinking, wow, this is really strange. So Rupanuga had me leave. We left. Later on, these sannyasis they were asked to leave the movement. I met them down in Florida at the end of 1970. I was supposed to open a temple. My wife didn't stay around because she didn't think I was romantic enough. So I was there to open the temple by myself. Probably my temple president didn't really care if I was married or whatever. that I should just open a temple. And so that was one of my first encounters with the fact that some devotees, of course these devotees at that time, they were very repentant on their consciousness of what they had said or what they had done. And they, as one of them told me that when I met them down there, he said that actually we actually meant that Prabhupada was the supreme servitor Godhead. He's not God himself. In any case, there was always challenges in our society, exactly what Prabhupada's position was. And after he left, then it even became more confusing for different reasons. Especially when we had what was called the Zonacharyas. Now, we were taught by Prabhupada for years that we should not be envious of the Acharya. And there was like a gap between, first of all, we didn't have this same kind of publications we have now. There was no internet. We didn't use a telephone. I didn't read a newspaper. I didn't even see a newspaper. Between the time I joined the movement and like in the 80s, I never saw a newspaper, practically speaking. We had no communication. We didn't have, when I joined the movement, we had a hand in our, what was called the karmi clothes. All we had was, they gave us a dhoti, which was not exactly like this. It was, you went to the store and you bought some cloth. They bought rolls of cloth and they cut it up and you put it on. That's why people thought we were wearing bed sheets, because that's what we were wearing. They didn't give us shoes. We had a hand in our shoes because that was dirty. We had bath tongs on. And even though we went on we went on Harinam 8 hours a day in Buffalo in the winter, when it was like, I guess here it would be like 20, 30 below zero, we wouldn't wear those dirty karmi shoes. We had bath tongs on, which is actually quite cold. And we went out in our dhotis, of course, because we wouldn't wear karmi clothes. In any case, it was rather innocent back then. We didn't listen to the radio because we didn't have a radio. We didn't go and listen to the television because we didn't have a television. We didn't read the newspaper because we had no money to buy a newspaper. The only thing we had, it was very simple. At the beginning it was 8 hours a day in Harinam or more. Come back, eat an apple and go to sleep. And then when we got bhakti-yoga, then it was 15 hours a day in bhakti-yoga. And we were lucky if we had an apple. So, when we found out that now Prabhupada had appointed 11 acharyas, we didn't know because there was no room conversations. We had one letter, Prabhupada appointed Ridviks, but we had to accept the words of our authorities that that's what Prabhupada wanted. But so that went on, and I happened to be associating with him. Now, after some time, we started to wonder, actually, what did actually Prabhupada want? And sometime later in the 80s, someone put out a book with Prabhupada's conversations, what he was saying. So in one conversation at 1977, before he left, some leading authorities from the government in India, one governor and one chief minister, came to talk to Prabhupada alone. So there were servants. I mean, I wasn't in Vrindavan at that time. My leader from Radha Damodar, I was supposed to go there, to be there, but my leader from Sankirtan told me I should just keep on doing the airports at that time. So, at least these government leaders, they wanted to talk to Prabhupada privately. And Prabhupada's disciples didn't want to go, but Prabhupada told them, you can go, I'll talk to them privately. But Bhakti Shri Maharaj left the tape recorder on so we could get the conversation. And in that conversation, they were asking Prabhupada, more or less, I was trying to find it on my little phone here, but I couldn't find it, the exact words, but who will take over the movement after you leave? Who will be the next acharya? So Prabhupada said, actually, I'm not going to appoint any acharya. He said, all my disciples will take the leadership. As much as they follow, they'll be the next leader. He said, not that I'm appointing anyone as the leader. If you want to become the leader, he told them, you can also become the leader. But you have to follow. Now, after I understood something, and then I've spent the last good amount of time trying to understand that and try to put it into practice in terms of how our society should be led. Because the point is that the leader is one who makes other people leaders. In other words, as Prabhupada wrote to me one time, he said that the more you work seriously to help bring Krishna's other children back to the spiritual kingdom, then the more he'll bestow all his blessings upon you. That Krishna is never ungrateful for our efforts to serve him, rest assured. So I understood that I had no special qualification, but I'd become qualified as much as I became serious to make others Krishna conscious. And that everyone had the same opportunity. It wasn't that anyone was special and they were going to get special mercy, especially when Prabhupada was here, he emphasized Vani. Vani means hearing from the spiritual master and then putting into practice what he has to say, rather than Vapu, personal association. Of course, personal association is also inspiring. As I said, I got a lot of inspiration by not only talking to Prabhupada, but just by being with Prabhupada and watching him interact with others. But I understood that even more important was to understand what Prabhupada wanted me to do, and then to do that. And then as much as I did that, then the books of Prabhupada, the books of Krishna, would all be revealed what they're actually saying. And it's actually quite simple, that everyone is Krishna's servant. And that if we serve Krishna, that will be revealed to us. And that Krishna is unlimitedly beautiful, unlimitedly kind, unlimitedly strong. He's unlimitedly everything, and he's everywhere. So it's a good friend to have. And everyone has an equal opportunity to have a relation with Krishna. There's no special person who can't have a relation with Krishna. Everyone has an equal opportunity. As much as we understand what Krishna and his acharyas are saying, as much as we follow that, then Krishna will reveal himself to us. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. The Krishna consciousness is equally open to everyone. And if one gets a special position, then that special position is only meant to help people understand that. How to develop a service attitude. As Srila Rupa Goswami says that our Krishna consciousness movement is based upon loving exchanges. And love depends upon some discrimination also. Love and discrimination have to be there, but it's a different kind of discrimination than the discrimination we have in the mundane world. This discrimination is based upon humility, because love and humility go together. You can't have actual real love without an equal amount of humility. Just like Srimati Radharani, she's the humblest. because she's also the greatest lover of Krishna, but she's also the humblest out of all the devotees. Even sometimes her assistants, they try to dress her, but she's always in anxiety because she wants to go out and please Krishna. She cannot tolerate not being in a situation where she's pleasing Krishna. But after she says, hurry up, I'm leaving. I can't wait anymore to. And then she tries to walk off the door, and then she stops and says, are you sure Krishna wants to see me? Maybe Krishna wants some other gopi. She becomes very humble and thinks that maybe I'm not actually qualified to see Krishna. And then her manjaris, her assistants, have to push her out the door. Krishna is waiting for you. You're actually the one he's waiting for. So humility and love go together. You can't have actually pure love unless you're purely humble. Unless you can appreciate how wonderful everyone else is, how wonderful everyone else's service is, then there's no question of actually getting Krishna and anyone else's and then his devotees' mercy. Because if we actually had the mercy, then we not only realize how wonderful Krishna is, but we realize equally well how wonderful everyone else is. And we feel very humble in comparison to if we actually have love for everyone, then we feel ourselves very insignificant, just like even Krishna feels himself insignificant to his devotees. When the devotee surrenders to Krishna, then Krishna takes his devotee as his shelter. Even though he's so great, but he thinks love is greater than anything he has. So if the devotee loves Krishna, then Krishna, he feels himself insignificant to the devotee, even though he's God. So similarly, if one takes the position of a leader, an actual acharya is one who actually is in that position, as Prabhupada wrote to Janara in 1968. He said, actually, one who's actually an acharya, that's how he said, the words of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is as good as scripture. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is an acharya. An acharya means one who's like Srimati Radharani, who thinks herself, even one of her subordinate gopis, as being a greater devotee than herself. He said there are others who are not quite on that level, but because they strictly follow, therefore they can actually act as an acharya. The point is that an acharya, as Prabhupada writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita 147, that the acharya that there are two types of shiksha gurus. One is one who sees everything objectively. That is, they're actually situated in transcendence. They're in that mood of love and devotion. They actually understand perfectly well their relation with Krishna, and they always have that mood of aspiring to become a devotee of Krishna. All the devotees of Krishna eternally have that mood of aspiring to become a devotee, desiring to develop love for Krishna. Although they have the greatest love for Krishna, unlimitedly, but they always feel that they're lacking that love for Krishna and always aspiring to obtain it. Therefore, they're always trying to increase their service to Krishna and to his devotees. So then, there are others, probably right, who are not exactly on that platform, who are not objectively seeing everything, but they have experience in Krishna consciousness. It's called subjective. They can also help if they explain their subjective understanding. But then Prabhupada said, writes, the acharya in the true sense of the term, who is authorized to deliver Krishna, and which is the disciple with full spiritual knowledge, and thus awakens him to the activities of devotional service. So such a person was Srila Prabhupada. And because he was on that platform, therefore he was able to inspire others not only to appreciate himself, he also was trying to inspire others to understand how all those who are serving Krishna and following his instructions, and also those who are following the disciple succession, how they were also representatives of Krishna worthy of service and appreciation. and love. And therefore he was a perfect Mahabhagavat. And he also taught perfectly he tried to teach us how to cooperate with each other, to serve the Mahabhagavat, to serve in that mood. I remember in the beginning the devotees were a little rough, including myself. Not that I'm not rough now, I'm a little less rough than I was before. Depends on So, sometimes they would become quite intense. And Prabhupada would always say that we should always be in the mood of loving and embracing. So one of the devotees who was quite rough, I mean really rough, Narayan. Every time I saw him, he came to Buffalo to fix our altar. I was the head pujari at that time, although I didn't know very much about devotional service. But he wanted me to do things, and I wouldn't do them because I thought it wasn't good for the deities. But we'd practically get into a fist fight. It wasn't, In any case, but he always every time he saw me, he embraced me. Because he said, Prabhupada said we should always be in the embracing mood. Although I didn't know whether he was embracing me or trying to crush me. But it was kind of embrace. So that mood, that loving mood for the devotees is also, we're taught by the Acharya how to have that consciousness, how to see the devotees not as ordinary personalities, but as actually representatives of the Acharya, which they actually are, representatives of Krishna. And as much as they serve, they actually become directly under Krishna's control. And how to see the innocent persons as also eternally servants of Krishna, and that we should help them reawaken their relation with Krishna. That's what Krishna wants us to do. And others we should try to avoid and not waste their time and waste our time, get them more angry than they already are. So the Acharya comes and he teaches that, and this is eternal principles of how to, if one has a position, for instance, in our society, we always have this, the initiating guru, why are you initiating guru? Well, what are you doing? Or why do you think you're a leader? You think you're trying to control me? Yes, I'm trying to control you. It's very hard. We're trying. Yes, but actually everyone is a servant, and that servant is about loving exchanges. So we should understand that we're trying to teach our followers how to engage in service to others, not only to ourselves, how to discriminate between those who are higher than they are, so they can serve them in a loving way, an appropriate way. Those on the same level, how to cooperate with them for the mission of the Acharya, and how to help the innocent, how to reawaken their Krishna consciousness. And if those leaders do that, if that's their mission in life, then everyone else will appreciate that these are actually bona fide representatives of the Acharya, because that was the Acharya. That's what he was doing. That's what Prabhupada was doing. And then when the devotees when the leaders see that those who are also giving shelter and instructions to their followers are teaching that, giving them faith in the words of the Acharya and faith in the leadership, then they also preach to their followers and instruct their followers how to have more faith in the other devotees, the other natural leaders. Sometimes we hear about Shiksha gurus, but actually the movement is full of Shiksha gurus, because Krishna is in everyone's heart, giving everyone knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness, not only a certain number of people. And everyone will become inspired by different devotees in different ways, who are better than they are in steadiness and service or relationships with the devotees. Everyone will become inspired in different ways. There's no need to officially designate this will be the leader, that will be the leader. Everyone in our society will become a leader as much as they understand and follow Prabhupada's instructions and example, and the instructions and example of others who are following Prabhupada's instructions and our acharyas in disciple succession. Thank you very much. Granted, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And anyhow, that will actually lead to a loving spiritual family, which is the only way this movement will actually grow and spread. Yeah. I have some devotees to share.
Thank you very much for these very, very inspiring words about our Srila Prabhupada. So now I would like to invite someone wants to share his realization with Srila Prabhupada and some words of appreciation. So.
I would like to share two stories. How I felt actually. Srila Prabhupada mercy, but I didn't know that this was his mercy. I joined ISKCON at that time it was actually only one devotee, Gopikanta, in 1978. And he came to Zagreb, Croatia, and he was preaching to, young people were going to India, and then they came back and they put a slideshow or talking about India, spirituality, yoga, meditation. So I was visiting these places, these lectures, and he came there and he distributed Sri Upanishad, and I took the book and I read it. I was immediately convinced. Then I met him second time after a few months, and third time he came there to preach to the people. I asked him, "Can I join you?" And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I'm convinced. I want to help you in book distribution or in preaching." I didn't know why I was saying this, but later on I understood. So he gave me. He said, "Yes, come." This was only one flat with one room and kitchen and bathroom. So first day I came, I was wearing long hair. Then he shaved me up. Second day he said, "Here are the books of Sri Upanishad, which translated by Srila Prabhupada. You are from Zagreb. You go to the city and distribute these books." And I said, "But how will I do it? What will I say?" And then he said, "Don't worry, Krishna will inspire you. Don't worry, Krishna will inspire you. You just go and distribute." And he gave me the bag and the books, and I went to the city, and I approached the people, and they were taking books like anything. And I was really bewildered. What's going on? Why people take the books so easily? And even some person said, "Give me 2 books. Can I have 2 books?" Yes. You can take 2 books. I give you so much money. I was really surprised. What is going on? How people like the books. Then after few years, I realized actually why is this happening. I heard actually in one lecture of Harikesh Maharaj, and also it is written in Prabhupada Lamrita, how Prabhupada gave actually mercy to this Sri Upanishad. When Prabhupada was very ill, and in the end of these days, in 1977, Harikesh was invited to come to Vrindavan because Prabhupada was the devotees knew that he will leave. So he came, he arranged for this Sri Upanishad to translate and print very quickly in 1 week actually. It's another story. And then he came to Vrindavan with few books, Swedish book, I think Srimad Bhagavatam, and German Krishna book, and Yugoslavian Sri Upanishad. And then he went in front of the door of Srila Prabhupada, and one devotee was guarding, and he said, "You cannot enter with the books." And Harikesh said, "Why? The books are Srila Prabhupada's life and soul. I have to show him these books." And then he pushed the devotee and he went to the room, and they were like Swami Brahmananda Swami, Jayapataka Swami, I think Jayadvaita Swami, big devotees, and someone said, "Prabhupada, here is Harikesh brought the books to see you." And he presented the books, and Harikesh said, "This is Srila Prabhupada, this is first book in the communistic countries, Yugoslavian Shishopanishad. And Srila Prabhupada took the book and he said, look the book. He was like very pleased. And he asked, so how many you printed? 10,000 Srila Prabhupada. Can you distribute them? But there was no devotee, no temple. But Hare Krishna said, certainly Srila Prabhupada, certainly. And then print more, Srila Prabhupada said. Then I understood understood after some years when I heard this thing that this day when I was distributing books and later on, it was actually Srila Prabhupada's mercy that first day I joined the temple, the flat or this devotee Gopikanta. I didn't know about ISKCON, about anything. I just was convinced this is the book which is speaking about Krishna, Upanishad, I had to distribute. But actually behind this was Srila Prabhupada's mercy and his blessing that this book has to go out and be given mercy to people and that they can attain love to Godhead. Actually there were the seeds, Bhakti Lata Beach. We were planting the seeds in each person who take the book at that time. They were like, how to say, given this love of Godhead which they can attain if they follow what is written in the books. So Srila Prabhupada is actually preaching. If we give books to people, we give Srila Prabhupada, as Prabhu said, we give Srila Prabhupada, he's actually convincing them, he's preaching to them, he's giving his mercy, Krishna's love. And this is actually, how to say, our goal to give Srila Prabhupada to others in form of these books. Srila Prabhupada ki.
One time Srila Prabhupada said that these books, they distribute themselves. And somehow or other, if it goes from our hand, we might get a little book score, get some credit.
I remember one time I was doing a marathon. Well, one time I was asked to open an airport to see whether it was a good airport to distribute or not. So I didn't like doing airports that were illegal because I hated getting arrested by the police. They weren't very pleasant. Anyhow, I went to the airport. I was so intense because I had a focus. It was a small airport in Austin, Texas. I knew if I wasn't focused, I would get arrested, which I didn't want. So I was completely intense, focused on what I was doing. And everyone I went up to, I didn't even have to say anything. I just handed them the book, and they opened their wallet and gave me money, which is quite nice. And I did that for a few hours, and then that was the last time we ever distributed at Austin Airport. But in any case, if we wanted, everything depended upon a desire. If we were, Krishna immediately empowered you if you had that desire to distribute the book. Even when I was distributing with other devotees who were bigger distributors than I was, even when in the airports, when I became envious that they were distributing more books than I was, as soon as I developed that envy, along with it came a desire to distribute the book. And then Krishna would have someone appear out of nowhere to take the book from it, simply because I developed a little envy to distribute the book, a little desire to do it. So Krishna, he's actually distributing the books, he's making arrangements, he's sending the people, he's doing everything. We just have to have the desire to be the instrument, to take part in it, that's all. And that applies to everything, kirtan or prashad or whatever. We just have to be willing to have the good fortune.
Thank you. Anyone else like to share?
Hare Krishna. I'd also like to add something regarding the books. Sometimes when we read Srila Prabhupada's books, we may take it for granted, it's so nice and so understandable. But maybe when I do some research, then sometimes I come up, I find some texts from other sampradayas or other Vaishnava groups, or even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then when you read either translations of Shastras or translations of some prayers, it's so difficult to understand the meaning, even though it's in English. So then I really started appreciating Srila Prabhupada, what a masterpiece his books are. to translate such profound and difficult philosophy into such easy to understand language. So there's no doubt he was empowered by Krishna to do that for us Westerners with peanut brains. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Won't take much time. So I have like a short thing to share. Usually in Delhi, we are like doing distribution on the roads. So you have 60 seconds. Sometimes 120 seconds is maximum. So 60 seconds. Car comes, you go, present the books, they take it, you move out. You don't want to block the road. So I was like doing it, and it was in the afternoon. It was sunny day in Delhi. You can imagine how hot it could be. 45 is the maximum it goes. Sometimes 50, like it was last time. So I was doing the distribution. My friends were they were like taking the other side and like the other side. And somehow books were not going. 45 minutes, not even a single book. Then like, I don't know. Then I was like praying to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, what's happening? It's not even a single book. And then after praying Srila Prabhupada, I went again. I started my, and then one car comes, and he says like, how many books you have? And I in my heart like, oh, I have so many. I have like cartons of books. How many do you want? It's like, yeah, I have a lot. So it's like, go bring the book as many as you have there. I went back, asked my friends, how many books we have here right now? It's like, this carton, that's all. It's like, don't we have like few more? Like we have in another place, we have to get, like, no, I want it right now. But somehow I took the carton, gave it to the devotee, not the devotee, the person, he took the whole carton from me. In just snap. My score went so high in just, I don't know, it wasn't going, and all of a sudden, like, oh, the whole carton was gone. So, and I think this is what in Delhi we all do. Like, if our books are not going, that's what we do. We just pray like, oh, Prabhupada, it's not going. You have to do something, help me. So yeah, Srila Prabhupada is helping real life. And I think anybody who is following what Srila Prabhupada said, like, could experience this thing. So, yeah. Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dhammarastaka. Should we do Dhammar? How long do we need for Dhammarastaka?
Yeah, take one.
Yeah.
If I can do it, you can do it.
So, because Prabhupada, we are all here, and because you, we will, I hope, still stay here. Thank you very much for your kindness and living Prabhupada Lilamrita. This is something special. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Ananta, please say something.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Please say something more.
I would just like to express all of you that you share. I would just reveal something that is connected by inviting the Prabhupada disciples in our small yatra. Is especially for this reason which we experience today, so we can really have this witnessing Prabhupada in Vanu form, Vapu form, yes. And we hear that Vani is most important, but this Vapu realization which you share today also, it's additional value to that Vani. It's so personal and so heart-touching. Because you mentioned part of it that contaminated with this impersonal, attitude which is there in all of us, of course. So these details and this experience is like with Prabhupada, also did memories with Siddhartha Prabhu. Yeah, this enriches, enhance our relationship with Prabhupada. Although we never met him in person, like you did, but gives really additional value of the personality. What a amazing person Srila Prabhupada was. And of course, this gives also us like a inspiration and how to say, it's our fuel of gratitude which we get in this kind of exchange. My personal also motivation is how to express gratitude to Prabhupada, whatever he gives to us. We don't understand what he gives us, right? But little hint is there, so these kind of events remind us that we reconnect again to that gratitude and try to act upon it, not just to philosophically discuss it, but also act upon it, to try to assist him in his glorious mission. And we hear so many witnesses, and all of us, we are witnesses of that unbelievable mercy which we got, that we got this opportunity to be in his movement, his mission somehow or the other. Although we are not qualified at all, we are just mercy cases. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we now move to next point of the program. Now Damodarashtaka, and then after short kirtan we will have Pushpanjali around 7:45, and 8 o'clock prasadam is planned. Thank you once again for all to come to participate in this event, and okay, let's move to Damodarashtaka. Thank you very much once again to our dear guests for your sharing Prabhupada with us. Hare Krishna. Jai. So we read translation of Damodarashtaka first, and then Lita Govinda will lead the kirtan, the Damodarashtaka.
Shri Damodarashtaka. Hare Krišna, Hare Krišna. Shri Damodarashtaka. Ponižno se priklanjam Shri Damodari, Vsevišnjemu Gospodu, ki je utelešenje večnosti, znanja in blaženosti. Njegovi sijoči uhani nihajo sem ter tja, ter poljubljajo njegova lica. Ko je v Gokulju prizarjal svoje zvišene zabave, je razbil vrč, v katerem je njegova mati pinila jogurt. Nato pa iz hrambe ukradel maslo, ki so ga hranili obešenega visoko pod stropom. Zaradi te porednosti je v strahu pred materjo Jašodo urno pobegnil od lesenega možnarja, vendar ga je le-ta končno le ujela. V strahu pred šibo v materini roki joče in si z lotosovima ročicama znova in znova mane oči, polne strahu. Okrog vratu, ki ga krasijo 3 črte, da spominja na školjko, nosi biserno ogrlico, ki se zaradi hitrega dihanja ob njegovem joku trese. Ponižno se priklanjam Šri Damodari, vsevišnjemu Gospodu, ki okrog trebuščka ni zvezan z vrvmi, temveč čisto ljubeznijo svoje matere. Ko prebivalci Gokule opazujejo njegove otroške zabave, se utapljajo v oceanu blaženosti. Tistim, ki jih privlačita njegovo veličastje in obilje, daje vedeti, da ga lahko osvoji le zaupna ljubezen njegovih čistih bhakt. Z veliko ljubeznijo in vdanostjo se 100-krat in 100-krat priklanjam Gospodu Damodari. O Gospod, čeprav lahko podariš vse vrste blagoslovov, te ne prosim za brezosebno osvoboditev, niti za najvišjo vrsto odrešitve, večno življenje na Vajkunti. Ne prosim te niti za katerokoli drugo izmed ugodnosti, ki si jih zagotovimo s posvečanjem 9 načinom bhakti. O Gospod, želim si le, da se tvoja podoba Bale Gopale iz Vrindavane zavedno naseli v mojem srcu. Kakšna je korist od kakršnega koli drugega blagoslova? O Gospod, mati Jašoda znova in znova poljublja tvoj lotosov obraz, obdan s kodri mehkih črnih las. Tvoje ustnice pa so rdečkaste kot sadež bimba. Naj ta čudovita podoba tvojega lotosovega obraza zavedno vstopi v moje srce. Na tisoče drugih blagoslovov mi nič ne pomeni. O vsevišnji Gospod, ponižno se ti priklanjam. O Damodar, o Ananta, o Višnu, o Gospodar. O Gospod, bodi zadovoljen z mano. Blagoslovi me svojim milostnim pogledom in odreši tega ubogega nevedneža, potopljenega v ocean materialnega trpljenja. Razodeni se mojim očem. O Gospod Damodar, čeprav te je mati privezala k lesenemu možnarju, si sinova Kuvere, Manigrivo in Nalakuvaro osvobodil narodovega prekletstva in jima podaril čisto vdano služenje. Prosim, tudi meni podari to dragoceno prema bhakti, saj si ne želim nobene druge vrste odrešitve. O Gospod Damodar, naj se najprej poklonim bleščeče sijajni vrvi, ki veže tvoj trebušček. Nato se priklanjam tvojemu trebuščku, v katerem leži celotno vesolje. Ponižno se priklanjam tvoji najdražjejši mati Radharani in tebi, vsevišnjemu Gospodu, ki uprizarjaš neštete zabave. Vsa slava Šrimati Radharani in Damodari Gospodu Krišni.
Namamishvaram Sachit Anandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Namamishvaram Sachit Anandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashoda Biyolukala Param Rishtam Atyanta Todrutya Gopya Yashoda Yolukalavanam Param Rishtam Atyanta Todrutya Gopya Rudantam Muhur Netra Yugmam Vijantam Yogmena satanka netram Rudantamo netra yogmam vijantam Karamboja yogmena satanka netram Muhushvasakam patrirekam kakantam Stita gravam damodaram bhakti-badam Muhushvasakam patri rekam pakandam Stita Bhaktaischa Gopiyam Vinam Prema Kamboja Atyantam Nilam Vinam Udalai Snida Bhaktaischa Gopiyam Mukhchum Vitam Bimbarakta Dharame Manasya Virastam Talam Lakshalabhai Mukhchum Vitam Bimbarakta Dharame Manasya Virastam Talam Lakshalabhai Namo Deva Namo Dharananta Vishnu Prasiddha Prabodhuka Jaladimagnam Namo Deva Namo Dharananta Vishnu Prasiddha Prabodhuka Jaladimagnam Kripa Drishti Vishtyati Ginam Gatanu Grihaneshamam Agyam Edyakshidrishya Kripa Drishti Vishtyati Ginam Gatanu Grihaneshamam Agyam Edyakshidrishya Uveratma Jaubadha Utyai Vayadvat Vaya Muchitao Bhakti Bhaja Kripaucha Uveratma Jaubadha Utyai Vayadvat Vaya Muchitao Bhakti Bhaja Kripaucha Tata Prema Bhakti Svakame Prayacha Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha Tata Prema Bhakti Svakame Prayacha Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha Namaste Stu Dhamme Spurvaditi Dhamme Vadiyodarai Atha Vishwasya Dhamme Namaste Stu Dhamme Spurvaditi Dhamme Vadiyodarai Atha Vishwasya Dhamme Namo Radhikayai Tvadiya Priyayai Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tobhyam Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyayai Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tobhyam Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya
Hare Krišna. Sedaj sledi pušpanjali, ki ga bo vodil naš gost, prapadočenc iz Grace Partaplavu. Se bomo obrnili vsi proti pravopadu. Vstali bomo, pa se obrnili proti pravopadu. Na desni strani Mataji, na levi premoji. Parta Prabhu bo pa malo razložil.
maybe all the vertically advantaged people can stand at the back, and the compact, awesome people can stand in the front. Just come closer.
Well, we throw the flowers, it's better to be as close as possible. So that way we don't throw the flowers on the top of everyone's head and probably doesn't get any flowers. Prabhupada's a vegetarian, so he doesn't bite, so he gets close.
So you will be throwing flower petals a total of 9 times. Each time we finish Srila Prabhupada's prana mantra, we'll say Pushpanjali 3 times. You'll throw flower petals, so we will do that a total of 3 times, so save enough petals to offer them 9 times. 9. If you don't have flower petals, maybe you can raise your hand. I'll take a few more. Raise your hand so we can find you. Does anyone else need flower petals? Raise your hand. Still a few more. There's more room here for some of the shorter devotees can come up here. Even closer.
Everyone should come forward.
Come.
You only give credit if the petals hit Prabhupada.
And ideally, you want to throw them overhand in a parabolic arch so that they land exactly at Srila Prabhupada's feet. Does anyone need flower petals? Raise your hand. Okay, we're good to go. Om Agana Timarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamayam Tadati Svapatandekam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvahutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Namaon Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminite Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Pushpanjali Pushpanjali. Pushpanjali. And if you can now offer your obeisances to Srila Prabhupada at one time. Nama on Vishnu Padaya. Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhakti Vedanta. Swamanite Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve. Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. Paschatya Deshatarine. Pushpanjali. 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 Again, we offer obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Nama on Vishnu Padaya. Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhakti Vedanta. Swamanite Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve. Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. Paschatya Deshatarine. Pushpanjali. 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 Our Divine Master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Haribol.
Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gora Haribol, 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 Nitai Gora Haribol. Nitai Gora Haribol, 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 Nitai Gora Haribol.
Jayo Vishnupada, Rajagacharya, Askara, the Tree, Srimad, with Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Yoga, Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, Vijay. Jayo Vishnupada, Paramahamsa, Rajagacharya, Askara, the Tree, Srimad, Srila Bhakti, Saranta, Saraswati, Thakur Maharaj, Vijay. Ananta Vaishnava, Rindi, Vijay. Namacharya, Thakur, Haridas Vijay. Prem, Shri Goho, Shri Krishna, Nitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhara, Shivesari Gaur, Bhakta, Vrinda Vijay. Shri Radha Krishna, Rupana, Chamakun, Radhakun, Gir Govardhan Vijay. Shri Vrindavan Vijay, Radam Vijay, Mayapur Dam Vijay, Bhakti Devi Vijay, Devi Vijay, Jamuna Mai Vijay, Ganga Mai Vijay, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Vijay, Brihatmadam Vijay, ISKCON founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Vijay. The fuel of gratitude for Srila Prabhupada Vijay. Shri Gornitai Vijay. Gaur Premanandi. Samad Bhakta Vindi Vijay. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru. Shri Gauranga. Glories to
Śrīla Prabhupada Tirva Mahotsava ki jai. Hare Krišna, dragi bhakte, sledi še zadnja točka našega festivala. Prasadam, ki ga ki so ga pripravili Bhakta-Vatsala Prabhu, pa ostali. Tako da najlepša hvala še enkrat za vaš obisk. Ljudno vabljeni jutri tudi na več stvari. Hare-rama zjutraj, če bo razmere dopuščale. Potem pa ob 5. popoldan bosta imela naša gosta, njena milost Uttama Mataji in Partha Prabhu, seminar ob 5. Na temo odnosov. Tako da ljudno vabljeni. Nedeljo pa prav tako boste imeli nedeljsko predavanje, tako da ponedeljek pa nadaljujete svojo pot, tako da izkoristite še to zadnjo možnost, 2-3 dni v njihovi prisotnosti. Slišali smo, kako sta bila intimno povezana s Prabhupadom, tudi v zadnjih dneh, ko je Prabhupad zapuščal, Partha Prabhu je bil s Prabhupadom, tako da izkoristite njegovo družbo in poskušajte izcediti nektar, vapo nektar o Šrila Prabhupadu. Hvala še enkrat. Šrila Prabhupada Tira Bhava Mahotsava ki jai. Hare Krišna. Jai. Hvala lepa.
Hare Krishna.